Are you watching that Rangers game? Is that tonight?
Yeah, dude, I've got such a stupid setup. I've got. So I have to stream in a few minutes for TYT and doing deep dive. So I'm going to be watching the January 6th hearing on air.
Okay.
And then I'm setting up an iPad on my desk.
Nice.
With the Rangers game, because I'll be honest, I'm way more interested in that.
Yeah. That's where the real drama is. That sounds good,
Game
though.
5. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Once again, bad Canadian. No clue what's going on there. But I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad you folks are enjoying it. But welcome, everyone, to the Insurgents. Rob and Jordan here. It's episode 108. Jordan just mentioned the January 6th hearing. We talked about that briefly, and we talked about a whole lot of other ongoing juicy newsy items. I don't even remember what exactly it was, but there was a bunch of stuff juicy in there. Yeah, that's the kind of thing as it's coming out of my mouth. I'm just like, what is this? What am I saying here? But we always appreciate having Eoin on the show. He's a writer for the Flashpoint, of course, and stay tuned as well to hear Eoin and Jordan talk about their brand new media venture. Stick around for the end of the episode for that. That's some exciting stuff.
It's very exciting. Yeah, we are disrupting the aggregation space.
Even more so. Yeah, really cool.
I'd say.
Yeah. We did a great episode last week with our friend Liv Agar. Of course, that's episode 107. That's, of course, for subscribers only. So if you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can do so at theinsurgents.substack.com. We also have a YouTube page now, right?
That's right. Yes. We'll put the link in the show notes. Please give us a follow on YouTube. It's free. And what we're trying to do there is obviously put the full public episodes, the teasers of the premium ones, but we want to do show clips and then maybe a little more. But Rob and I both do YouTube on the side, him for his Twitch streams, and I do YouTube for Rebel HQ with TYT. So we figured that's something we should probably do for the Insurgents as well. So please give us a follow over on YouTube. We're going to be building that out very soon.
Yeah. Follow on YouTube. Subscribe for the Live episode last week. It was a really good one. And stay tuned, because our friend Eoin Higgins is going to be joining the program right after this. I can sense the synergy from here.
Yeah, you can tell.
We've had a lot of high-profile meetings.
You can also tell by like how well we're vibing on music, like how in sync with each other we are.
Exactly.
I'm just really glad we didn't capture Eoin saying he likes the Jason Newsted era of Metallica.
I'll say it again.
Things were getting heated over here.
It was unbelievable.
That was almost our first full-fledged debate episode. It was getting... Emotions were boiling over. It was pretty outrageous.
Yeah. I like that they kind of lean into, we fucked up a few times. Did you see the other day they tweeted, it's the anniversary of everyone's favorite album, Saint Anger. What's your favorite song?
Some good replies on that one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Great.
Wasn't that the one that they made the documentary around when they were all like hated each other and were all in therapy and they were all just...
Yes, and Lars decided not to have the snare wire attached to his snare, and it had that like loud clanging noise.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's being played like inside a garbage can, basically.
It sounds like dog shit. The whole album is dog shit.
Like that documentary is really when he like leans, he like really embraces the villainy at that point. He's
the
like,
heel. Yeah.
Before that, I feel like he still thought that, even with the Napster thing, like he really thought that he was the good guy. But then, like it's like after that, he was just like, fuck it, whatever, I don't care.
It's also gotten so much worse though for artists since Napster, because streaming just pays them nothing. So like I could see how part of him is like, oh yeah, this just isn't fair. And I don't think his motives were entirely altruistic and just looking out for everyone else. Like, part of his argument, sure, does apply. That hurts a lot of smaller artists, but they have never been in a situation where, at least in the past few decades, where they have struggled financially. Like we were just talking about the Black Album. That, I think Jason Newsted can just live off of royalties from the Black Album forever.
Yeah, forever.
Now, still to this day, because it still sells so well. And that was, well before the Napster days. They haven't been in dire financial straits. No. So I think like he convinced himself that it was altruistic, but it was like really, really shitty. Because also Napster, like I'm not saying it's inherently good, but Napster also opened up a ton of new music to people who never would have heard of some of these artists. I found so much music that way and was able to access so much music that way that ultimately shaped my tastes now.
Well, and it built a new way to distribute content to people that these like dinosaur record companies just had been reticent to ever even explore because they liked how things were going. And they stumbled on a much more convenient and modern way that people wanted to use access content with the internet and with technology. And they kind of forced these record companies to start adapting to that. Like that's the reason that people were drawn into that as a distribution network. And it wasn't just the piracy, but it's just the convenience and the ease with which we could listen to music and discover things like that.
My issue with it was always like much more that he wasn't like Lars was not approaching it like, well, this is like a new technology that we can do something with. Like maybe we can find like a compromise or something. Like he was just like, no, this needs to stop right now. And it's like, even then, like you could tell that there was just no way, like you can't put that shit back in the bottle. Like all it is you're just solely, interested in the fact that you might be losing some money when you're already like a multi-millionaire.
Yeah. It's ironic though. The reason my music tastes are the way they are now is because a friend burned Ride the Lightning. He downloaded and burned Ride the Lightning for me when I was young, and I had never heard anything like that before. I just wasn't into any sort of rock in general, let alone like thrash or metal. And that just totally opened my eyes to a whole new world of music. And then he burned me System of a Down's Toxicity. And it was just like, holy shit, man. These are great. Yeah. And that just, the rest is history. So thanks, Lars.
Thanks, Lars.
We did it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we could come together on this. Things were a little heated, so I'm glad we could put that behind us. Get back on the same page. Thanks for coming on the show again, Eoin.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's kind of an unstructured jam sesh here.
Yeah, we're riffing.
We're going in live. Fuck it.
Yeah, whatever.
That's sure we'll find something. That's the kind of rapport that we have, that we can do that. There is plenty going on, certainly.
Oh, and you are a Magic the Gathering head.
I am.
You're a Commander guy.
I am. I'm a Commander guy and a paper guy. Paper player.
Yeah, you're old school.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's just more... You know what it really is that I know that if I start playing Arena, like on my phone or on the computer, like that's... It's just like one... I can't do it. It'll suck up all of my time. So I just try and stay with just paper and just Commander. And I just play Commander because that's what my friends who I play with back home, back in Western Massachusetts, when I visit there, that's what we play.
I love Standard. I think it's fun because it's just to get into Modern or Historic or anything with a fixed format just takes so much money to really, really build a strong deck with staying power. I feel like with Standard, it's completely upended every year, or sometimes even every new set. Which you could make the argument, well, you're just going to spend more money in the long run there. I also like that it's fresh, and there's ways that you could build cheaper decks that are still effective in Standard. But Rob, I hear you really want to weigh in with some insight here.
Yeah, I know what all this stuff is, and I also think it's cool. And
cool.
I also like the decks that are more... I like usually a 50-50 kind of combat defensive deck.
That's your approach.
Which kind of gives you an opportunity to... attack on one hand, but then also you have the ability, if you leave yourself open to attacks, you can also defend with different spells and stuff.
That sounds
I like
right.
to do that.
Actually, I never really thought about it like that, but I can see that though.
Yeah. But These are kind of like advanced strategies that I'm into. But if you're more amateur, you're just getting into it, and you might not have access to some of this kind of stuff.
We're kind of just like we're just like sitting around the campfire right now, just listening to you.
That's what I bring to the table in these kind of discussions. So I'm glad that you can both kind of benefit from that.
Have you played the new Fortnite season yet?
Me? Yeah, I have. I enjoy it. I like it. I like the plants, the stuff with the seeds and stuff, the reality plants. I don't totally get it. I don't know what's going on as usual, but I'm into it.
I did actually download Fortnite for my phone back when it was like really popular, very briefly. I think I played it once and I was just like, this is none of this. But I'm not a good gamer. I'm not good at gaming at all anyway, so
yeah.
It's just not like video gaming.
It's okay.
It's not really my...
Well, I know for some people, like it's a way to just escape from this kind of relentless onslaught of bad news on in the media, the coming climate crisis, the recession around the corner, inability to get housing. Like there's a lot of things that are affecting this generation. I think that's why they reached for these kind of pastimes as ways to escape from that. But I think the really exciting thing that's happening on that level, I know there's a lot to be anxious about. There's a lot to be frustrated about. But as President Joe Biden outlined yesterday in his interview with Jimmy Kimmel, you turn on the TV and you see, what do you see? Biracial couples in those advertisements. And when I see that, it really just feels like we're on the right track. We're on the right path.
You say that?
Are you fucking serious?
I thought you were joking.
No, I'm deadly serious. President Biden did indeed say that.
What year is it?
In the interview with Jimmy Kimmel. He's like, the youth. That's why I'm still optimistic. He's, of course, talking about all the reasons, like pointing out all these horrible problems like he's just some random guy and not the fucking president of the United States. And talking about, of course, how Republicans are blocking him from doing anything and not mentioning the people in his own party that are blocking him from accomplishing anything. But then he's like, this is why I feel optimistic. The youth, they turn on TV and he referenced the biracial couples on advertisements as the thing that's what we need to look at, is like that we're on the right path. So I'm feeling good about the future of America. And this could be one of the episodes of the show that's maybe a little bit more positive because a lot to look forward to.
We talked about this last week with Liv, though, when you were talking about how a lot of people just kind of conflate the casting in like Disney series or Marvel movies as a sign of progress.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's like explicitly saying now it's like in advertisements and that, like, it's just nice to know that this like brain rot just goes all the way to the top. Nothing needs to change, but we need diversity in commercials for Clorox wipes. That's
which is not a new phenomenon, by the way. It's not at all a new phenomenon, but like there's been representation in media and commercials and media now for many decades.
Well, I mean, I think that the thing is that, well, first of all, I mean, honestly, I don't know if it's been many decades. It's been like there was still resistance to that relatively recently, but it's fine. Like, it's good that like that kind of representation is out there, especially for kids, like when like it does affect like the culture and stuff. But it is just like, that's it though. Like, that's not like something that the most powerful person in the world should be like telling a talk show host as like evidence that things are getting better, is that there's representation in like a laundry detergent commercial. You know what I mean? Like, that's not like a solution.
Yeah.
That's just what it is it's an indicator of a positive cultural shift that's been ongoing, right? And so that, like, okay, great, yeah. So like that shows you that has been happening, but that's it though.
And now, because of like Rob said, because people in Biden's own party, McMansion specifically, won't support extending the child tax credit. People who received that added tax credit and now don't have it are struggling to pay for groceries. So, like, that's just one example, like you're saying. But we talked about it before on this show. Their policy in the White House is to not specifically blame Manchin or Sinema. And that's what they want the Democratic approach to be, not to blame them, to blame Republicans. But you have these obstacles within your own party, and no representation in the Avengers or in Tide bleach pens and commercials are going to help address people's material needs, which are very real and getting worse because of inflation, because of gas prices. Like, people are struggling. This is an aesthetic you're celebrating.
Yeah, I've realized too, this is what gives a lot of ammunition to like these kind of free speech warriors in like the stand-up comedy world, like Ricky Gervais, for example. I recently watched Ricky Gervais' new special for another podcast to talk about his decline over the last several decades. And I think because there's been some of these like shifts in culture where, for example, transgender people over the last 10-15 years have been more vocal in trying to be treated equally and in trying to ensure that their community has the same rights as everyone else and they're not discriminated against. And in the process of that, gay rights have become more normalized, transgender rights have become more normalized. And if you're someone like Ricky Gervais, who's this like multimillionaire, it's really easy to tell yourself that like, oh, we're living in this like woke progressive world where everything's always progressing into this direction. And, I'm the kind of iconoclast by pushing back against that and by questioning these things and to try perpetuating all of these like harmful stereotypes, and it's everyone else that's being upset. Because of course we're going in this woke progressive direction. I'm the only one pushing back against that. But that's if that like kind of representation is your only kind of signpost for whether society is progressing in any way, you can tell yourself that like, yeah, we do live in this woke progressive world. Really, when you look at like the actual material conditions that people are living under, like pretty much anyone, regardless of what marginalized community, and we see like, the climate crisis on the horizon, everything getting worse, the inability to get a house, all the things I mentioned earlier, upcoming recession, and we're heading into this drastically like more fascistic right-wing world. But these people kind of live in this millionaire bubble. They look at this kind of representation as the only example of how our society is progressing, and they have a completely distorted idea about like what our values are, what direction we're progressing in. Like really we're progressing in the wrong direction. Maybe positive things have happened in terms of this kind of representation in media, which is good, but overall we're going in the absolute wrong direction in every other way. But that's what you have when you have no kind of analysis of these kind of class examples, and your only way of looking at these things is this kind of culture war stuff. You can tell yourself that you're the oppressed minority,
right? And you'll notice like with Gervais and people like one time respected journalist Matt Taibbi and other people, and I'm just picking on him because he's just gone full transphobe in the last 24 hours. But like they're not picking on the people who have power. They're just picking on the marginalized people. They're just picking on the people who don't have power, who are trying to assert themselves. And because these people are trying to assert themselves and assert their identities as valid, people like Taibbi and Maher and Gervais and other little hangers-on are what they're doing is they're just acting in service of power and like entrenched power structures by essentially saying, you asking for recognition of your basic humanity is way more powerful and way more deserving of satire than people who are actually in power. And why they do that, you can come to your own conclusions about. I don't think it's particularly complicated, but it sucks. And then when on the other side, you have people who are in power talking about this kind of surface level, shallow stuff, like the identity of people in a commercial as an indicator of society's general health. It's bad in a different way, and it's equally shallow in both ways. In both instances, you have people who are not interested in any way with dealing with the actual issues and changing the way that things are in any material way. And so both of them are grabbing on to this kind of shallow materialistic stuff in a way that they obviously hope they can continue to distract people from the actual who is actually in power and how bad things actually are.
That's what I don't get about some of these people who, like you say, oh, and when you're talking about Taibbi, formerly respected, like I really liked a lot of his work for years.
Yeah,
The
it's been a
Divide
huge influence on me.
Yeah, The Divide is a fantastic book. He's done so many, he's done a lot of great reporting, and it's just like, for him and a few others in those circles, it's for years they positioned themselves as antagonists to people in power, which that's great. That's laudable. We want that. And I don't understand the motive, or, I just don't understand what led them to this point where, like you say, it's meticulous coverage of people who are socially and politically powerless. And especially in this moment where you have really insane, invasive, horrific bills in Republican-controlled state legislatures to dehumanize, to delegitimize, to harass, to violate trans people and trans kids. Why feed into that? Like, you got to look at the audience for content like that, right? Where you kind of feed into this narrative to further delegitimize or dehumanize trans people. The audience for that is not on the left. The audience for that is very much and largely, if not exclusively, on the right. So when you're doing that repeatedly, not just one piece like, oh, this is happening, what's going on here, but repeatedly covering it, talking about it, writing about it, whatever, and you have that kind of pattern, especially in this moment, it just signals to me that you feel that way too. And you're not just doing I'm just asking questions here. Like, you actually believe that. Because why else would you focus on it that hard?
Yeah, when you're taking that moment to just ask questions, like that's a specifically kind of political decision, and you're giving coverage for the absolute worst people that are engaged in this very well coordinated, well funded like assault on transgender people's rights, and you're aligning up with them. People that many of these folks that we're talking about probably used to make fun of, these kind of evangelical right-wing social conservatives. And I don't know how this kind of switch has happened. I think part of it is like owning the libs, because like these kind of rights have been embraced to a certain extent by this kind of liberal ruling class. So rather than kind of like examine the ways that that this kind of liberal ruling class maybe cynically weaponizes these kinds of issues and uses it for their own benefit, rather than like examine that, they kind of take the whole idea of these rights and kind of start openly questioning that and contributing to these right-wing campaigns in an effort to kind of like attack these establishment liberals that they don't like. And like you said, are just like using the most marginalized people that are under assault right now as kind of like collateral damage in that quest to own the libs.
Yeah, and like, someone like Taibbi is like he's skipping over the just asking questions point. Like, he's gone from very soft just asking questions to just extreme, like,
he's promoting that Matt Walsh documentary.
Right, he's doing everything but like telling his viewers that he agrees with Walsh. He's telling his audience to go to watch the movie. He's stopping just short of endorsing it. He also interviewed some TERF. I can't remember her name, and I'm not going to go to his profile to look it up because it's not that important. But in the quotes that he shared, like it's like the same kind of transphobic bullshit that you would hear from Jesse Singal or from Katie Herzog easily. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the same shit. Maybe even more extreme than them, or at least more outwardly extreme. And it's just like, why are you doing this, man? Like what is the point? Because to me, I reject basically like any of the kind of soft pedaling bullshit that people do about this issue when they say, oh, they're just concerned about detransitioners. Oh, I'm just concerned about trans people in sport. I'm just concerned about this. I'm just concerned about that. I don't care about that, and I don't think that is valid, and I think that it's totally bullshit. And it's just a way for people to try to kind of measure out like how far they can go with this stuff before going all the way. That's my opinion of what they're doing anyway. But to be promoting Walsh and his movie, to be just like to fill your time when you're someone like Taibbi with the massive audience that he has, to fill like an entire day of social media basically hammering home the point that Matt Walsh and people like him have a point and should be listened to. Like their ideas deserve to be aired out, and if you don't agree with that, then you're against free speech. Is just ridiculous bullshit, and it's just hiding the fact that like I said, like Taibbi is. I think that he went basically full mask off transphobia, but like even to the extent that there might be like something he's holding back a little bit, he's only barely doing that. He's only one step away. Much like, I mean, Greenwald's is like the same thing. I mean, like both of these guys, they're right there, and I really think that they should just like go all the way, because like at this point, what's the utility in not doing that? What's the utility in pretending that this is about anything else? I mean, these guys are have enthusiastically and actively cultivated a far right and right wing and conservative audience. So what's to be lost? Like, you've made very clear that you don't agree with the left on basically anything, and anybody on the left who disagrees with you is a quote unquote liberal. So what do you care? Like, what do you care? Like, why not just go all the way? And I just don't understand like why they haven't done that.
Well, and it's cowardly too, I think, to like do this kind of just asking questions asked, because like that's the thing. I replied to one of Taibbi's tweets last night about this, how he's promoting this documentary, and of course he has this kind of wiggle room. Oh, you didn't, people saying like, oh, you didn't read the piece, but while he's like openly just talking about these tweets and like pointing out, like you say, that he's making a legitimate point and that these academics can't answer these basic questions, and basically agreeing with the overall premise of the film, but in a way that kind of gives him wiggle room to say, oh, I'm not supporting it, I'm simply criticizing these professors that he's referring to.
Yeah, and somebody pointed out too that like they were like, well, like what Walsh did was he just chopped up the guy's response and selectively edited, and like it's not hidden. It's very obvious that it's being selectively edited to basically make the professor like seem boring, and like Taibbi just like immediately pivots to like, oh no, that's good though, because that's the way that these guys sound to everybody, so it's good that they're doing this, like it's good that he did this. So it's like, so you don't even want to have like this is what fucking drives me crazy about this shit, because it's like, if like you're complaining and whining because people don't want to watch this movie, because people are expressing themselves under their right to free expression to not watch this, right? That they don't want to. But so that is like somehow like a violation of free speech or against free speech principles. But to do like what Walsh is doing, to basically like selectively edit this stuff, like that's fine, because the people that he's selectively editing, like nobody wants to hear them anyway. It's like just stop with the like. I really don't like that bullshit. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. And
as well, like Matt Walsh is not so benign. Like Matt Walsh is openly going out there and saying, like, I don't believe anyone should be able to transition. Like, I don't think transgender people should exist. Like, he's not shy about this. He's not someone that's just asking these questions. He's literally part of a, again, extremely well coordinated, well funded campaign to attack transgender people and take whatever rights they've managed to claw away from these power centers and take them away and literally make it impossible for anyone to be transgender in the United States. That's their express purpose right now. And when you're contributing to it with these kind of just asking questions, or if you're doing something like Gervais where you're like, oh, well, it's just a joke, it's not actually harming anything, it's just words, it's just free speech, do you not like free speech or what? You're still contributing to this campaign of demonization that transgender people are experiencing. So it isn't just a matter of free speech. It's literally a political decision that is having real harm on actual people, and they're contributing to it happily. It's sick. It's sick to watch this happen.
Beyond that, I think some of the stuff those demagogues on the right and right-wing politicians, the people and the things that they've inspired on this outside of a legislative process, like harassing community events. There was a guy this week who went to a church, a Unitarian Universalist church in Texas, that just had pride flags on display and was tweeting from the service, and it looked like a small service, that someone's speaking right now and They said their pronouns are they, them, or something like that. And it's just like, dude, why do you care? And like, there's like these kind of like right wing, like griper type groups who are showing up at these community pride events in mostly red states, kind of stand outside and scream and harass them. It's like, again, why do you care? And I don't necessarily think that like the proper response is like, yes, we need kids at drag shows. It's like, just let parents do what the fuck they want. Like, why do you care? Like, why does anybody care? I don't understand why anything that another family does is your business. And then you see these like really horrible things happening in Texas where they're like, investigating parents of trans kids for abuse. And that led to a kid taking their own life because they felt so bad about it. Like, this is the consequence. And that is ultimately what these, quote, free thinkers just asking questions guys are feeding into. I wouldn't want any part of that.
Yeah. Well, and it's also a matter of like, we don't want any transgender people or any LGBTQ people in the schooling system. Of course, we have this now nonstop propaganda campaign about teachers talking about LGBTQ issues. Of course, we've got to be against that because it's grooming children, and parents, if parents want to talk about that, they should have freedom to do that. But then you realize when you see these campaigns going that it's not just about taking it out of public spaces, because then you're saying no, transgender or other LGBTQ people can't have private spaces either. They can't have private churches that are respectful of people's identities or pronouns or anything like that. They're going into these private spaces as well and ensuring that they're being harassed also. The ultimate goal here is to make sure that there's no community whatsoever for any of these people.
Yeah, and if people want to take their kids to any kind of show, like, who gives a shit? Like, it has not, like, that's what, like, there's this whole strain of, like, ideology and conservatism where they pretend that, like, what they're all about is, like, individual liberty and freedom and, the right to make your own decisions. But, like, the minute that the rubber hits the road on that shit, they just immediately chuck it to the side. Because they don't really want that. They don't really care about that. What they want is their specific way of life and the way that they think that things should be. Like that is what conservatism and the right wing are all about. Because what they want is to institute like their way of life, no matter what it takes. I mean, this guy Matt Walsh calls himself a theocratic fascist, and I know that Taibbi said that he says that just to troll, but it's like, well, yeah, like maybe he does, or you could just pay attention to like literally everything that he says and understand like
that's
like
what he wants. Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, it's disappointing to see like just I don't know, to see people kind of falling for this and contributing to this really obvious. Again, it's a political campaign which they're through this kind of obfuscation are encouraging. And people who I thought at one point would know better. That's the kind of really frustrating thing about it.
It sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at what else if we wanted to pivot to something, just checking like
some media drama over at one of the big papers there. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that.
Is that like Dave Weigel stuff?
Oh, you didn't see the woman got fired?
Really?
Felicia Somnez, yeah.
Somnez? Yeah, they just fired her.
Yeah.
Oh my! So they suspended Weigel and fired her. It's like they really mismanaged that.
They fucked up every part
amazing, of it. Yeah, that's really
every single part of it. Every single part of it. It's
so
insane.
Stupid.
Like,
I mean, that's my take on the whole thing. We're on the same. It just sucks. They're so stupid. People don't know how to handle this kind of shit. Like institutions like that just don't know how to handle things like this.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, why? God, don't get it.
They were so dumb. Like. You guys both remember she tweeted out something when Kobe Bryant died about the allegations of sexual assault that were levied against him, and they suspended her for that, even though I think that's fair to tweet that out because people always want to like erase people's legacies once they die. Yeah. And she tweeted it out, she got suspended for that, and then they took her, they said she wasn't allowed to cover anything related to harassment or assault because of her own personal experience. And then she, was upset about the retweet from Weigel. He gets suspended without pay for a month, and then she has been, tweeting about the process and tweeting about the reactions from her colleagues. And today she was fired. So it's just really, really terrible way that the Washington Post handled everything.
Yeah, they fucked it up.
Just
they
really,
fucked it up
stupid.
Every single Like I wrote about this for New Statesman, or I wrote about like the Weigel part of it, right? And just about how this was just, really clearly a case of cover your ass. Like the Post was just doing it to try and like squash the story. Like it had nothing to do with like their, that they actually thought that there was something wrong that he did, because if they had, they would have done it the day that it happened instead of like, 3 days later after a shitstorm developed on Twitter and like in company Slacks and stuff. So then like what they end up doing is like they end up suspending him for a month without pay, which is like so out of proportion for the offense here, where they could have easily just been like, oh, you have to go to like diversity training or like whatever and like take a week off. Like there are just like a million different ways they could have dealt with this, right? But instead they dealt with it in just the worst way possible. And then Somnaz just continues to criticize them and to attack them, both like in social media and like in company Slack and like via email. Like there was a woman at the Post named Brianna Moore who was also like bringing up like stuff that had happened in the past, like in the newsroom, like, kind of like this kind of just, I guess I would call it like careless racism, like or microaggressions, I guess, like, because it's not like it didn't sound like the stuff was like really intentional and ugly, like attacks, like targeted, but just kind of this kind of like careless, like offhand shit. And so that happens, and so then they fire her, and I guess like on the one hand, like I guess where could she go at this point, like with the company, like at what, like what was, like what else was there to do? But I think that if they had been smart, which they weren't because they're idiots, like they could have just like let her come to that conclusion herself, like let her be the one who does that. But instead of doing that, they fire her, ensuring, by the way, like it's Thursday, right? Like people had stopped talking about this. Like I think my article was published like yesterday. Like people had already stopped talking about this basically. I think, the article came out and but like people mostly like stopped talking about it. And now this just ensures that it's not only people are going to be talking about it today and tomorrow, but they'll be talking about it probably through the weekend and into next week, which is exactly like seems like what they would want not to happen. But they've just like mismanaged themselves into creating this shitstorm and making it even worse. And I don't really like understand like what their logic is, I guess.
No, and no one's really blameless either. Like, I'm not like a prude or anything about humor or anything. If you're like a mainstream reporter on Twitter, maybe you should have, Dave Weigel probably shouldn't be retweeting like women be shopping shit posts.
Yeah. Of course.
I think that's pretty fair. I also, he also did unretweet it and apologize. I don't know if it needed to be turned into this like multi-day long crusade, which really escalated it to this like really kind of dramatic level that I thought was a little over the top. But then you have the Washington Post from their end just completely mismanaging it from every way. I think it's been in like an overreaction in both ways with both Weigel and Somnaz that was engaging in this kind of like multi-day long tweet storm about this. It's just been kind of all around a lot of behavior that I think didn't really reflect too well on the old Washington Post there.
On the old Washington Post.
Really bizarre. Are either of you watching the January 6th hearing tonight? Congress kicks off their January 6th committee testimonies with some primetime action this evening. We're recording this on Thursday, June 9th. Yeah. It's competing with the NHL playoffs, which I don't know how that's going to go, because go Rangers, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I do like to listen to my baseball in the evening, but maybe, I mean, like there'll be like highlights and stuff, so that's probably what I'll do.
Yeah.
Does that make me a bad citizen? Probably does.
I think it does, yeah.
I mean, a lot of it's processed, though. And the thing is, like you say, you can get synthesized versions from clips on Twitter.
What I'm wondering from both of you is, do you think any of this is going to have any impact whatsoever? I think, because listen, like we didn't downplay the seriousness of like Donald Trump like commanding his acolytes to storm the Capitol and try and overthrow the election results. I think that's a fairly serious thing. I think the way that liberals reacted to it, like it was the most horrible crime in the history of America, was quite over the top, but I also think it was a serious thing. They shouldn't just be hand waved away. But we're here like a year and a half later. I think for most average folks in America, they're worried about other stuff now. They're worried about their bills. They're worried about the price of gas. They're worried about groceries, and all these various other crises that we're dealing with. I just don't see any situation where these hearings now, a year and a half later, are going to really sway anyone about any of this stuff. I think there was a time about, in the 6 weeks or so after this happened, or 6 weeks or 2 months or so after it happened, that Democrats could have immediately had hearings and made political hay of it and tried to use this to take down people in the Republican Party that contributed to it. And there would have been kind of a mandate for that. But with so much time has gone by since then, they made this extra effort to bend over backwards and be bipartisan as possible, so they would never be accused of being partisan in any way, of course. And no matter what turns up in these January 6th hearings, I just think most people have just moved on with their lives, and I highly doubt it's going to have much of an overall impact into anything. And probably because they're so paralyzed with actually using whatever power they have to hold people accountable for doing stuff like this, they're just going to end up showing all the evidence and then saying, well, we'll leave it in the hands of the voters, and just assume that that's going to have some impact on the way people are going to vote in these upcoming election cycles. And, I just don't see it. I don't think this is going to really change anyone's opinion that hasn't already made up their mind about this. And I think the time to actually make political hay over the incident, over January 6th, was probably in the weeks following and not a year and a half later in these hearings.
Right. I mean, they had an opportunity, and they should have done it. They should have done it because, again, this was serious shit that happened. But yeah, you're right. I mean, but that's exactly what they're doing with the guns, right? The Uvalde shooting happened. And let me preface this too by saying that I'm not taking a position because I understand there are genuine left arguments against gun control laws, and in that they have to be done very carefully because of who they can affect and what can happen in a carceral system, and I get all of that, but I think that it is really instructive to look at the politics around it, to if you can just kind of pull away from the horrific human tragedy that is just unspeakable, right? That happened. Yeah. But if you just pull away from it for a second and look at it from a political point of view, what happened is that the Democrats probably were delivered probably their best possible shot of getting legislation to deal with guns in the country, to get an assault weapons ban, raise the age for gun purchases, universal background checks. I feel pretty confident they could have made a pretty good push for all three of those in the immediate wake of this happening. But instead, they went on vacation for 10 days, and Chris Murphy decided to work with Republicans on trying to craft some legislation. And where are we now? It's been 3 weeks now, and now the legislation that he's getting through is basically nothing. And they're just moving on from there. Friend of your show and mine, Cameron Kasky, went on to Mehdi Hassan last night. So that'll be June 8th for people who are listening, not today live. So not the three of us. And he went on and was talking just about how this stuff is just complete bullshit, and it's just so that they get to say that they've done something when they have done absolutely nothing. And it's just really instructive to look at the way that this happens, and then to look at it in the context of the 1-6 hearings, where if they had done something about it immediately, something could have happened. But if I recall correctly, didn't they shut down the House for 3 or 4 days? They shut it down completely. So they have these moments of political action that they can take, and then they just fritter it away by delaying and making sure that nothing happens. And it's a frustrating pattern, to put it lightly, right?
So we'll see how this goes. The Senate just left town again today for a long weekend. Next week, I believe it's either next week next week is a short week because of Juneteenth. And then shortly thereafter, they go on a 2-week recess again. So maybe we'll see this before then, but
the window is closing before yet another vacation for the Senate.
I mean, I'm just glad that they're taking care
we're seeing
of
a mass
themselves,
shooting.
really.
We're seeing a mass shooting or more every day.
Yeah, one in Maryland, like right now. 3 days.
Yeah. Yep.
It's great. It's really nice.
So Jordan, do you think these hearings are going to mean anything? It's like I don't mean to be cynical about these things. I would like to believe that the Democratic Party is going to say, yeah, we're going to take this opportunity to go after our political opponents, go after the people in the Republican Party that were helping to plan this, and attack them, go after them with everything we have. But obviously, that's just not what they're about. They've been like with whether it's gun rights with the Uvalde incident, or whether there's this bending over backwards to appear bipartisan hampers their ability to actually engage politically with these issues in any way. Like, do you think these hearings are going to accomplish anything?
I think they'll accomplish something. I'll get to what it is, but not the Trump's locked up, he's done, right?
The walls are closing.
That's not what it's going to be. Yeah, absolutely not. And anyone telling you that, ignore them. They're not. They're feeding into this collective delusion in the kind of liberal circles. It will likely, at best, smear Trump a little bit. And I think what you're going to see from the stuff that we're going to hear from witnesses, many of whom are former Trump administration people, and people who don't have the same type of clout to avoid any blowback or punishment. I think you'll see some things that will sully his image a little bit. And it's not, like I said, it's not going to be the end of Trump. But what I think this does is, for enough people, and there are some people in the Republican Party who like everything Trump did, but are just tired of the chaos, tired of the drama, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and
like,
I think you
like
saw
Liz
a little.
Cheney.
Well, yeah, but I think there's a different type of Republican too. So you have like the Liz Cheneys, and you have like the Lincoln Project people, all those people who are just like, I'm going to work with Democrats now. I think there's still people who would never work with Democrats, but just don't like them and just kind of sat out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm derailing you. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, it's okay. I think it's a small percentage, but I think that can be exploited by someone like Ron DeSantis. And I think what this is going to do, the ultimate impact this is going to have, is that it really increases the tension between the Trump world and the DeSantis world. Because there are reports, and certainly not in liberal media, but I think and a lot of political press have seen that Trump's world doesn't really know how to prepare for this and doesn't know what to do. And it's not that like, oh, it's over, because he's going to be fine. He's going to have the same life that he has going forward. It's just that this creates a window of opportunity for DeSantis to exploit. And DeSantis is polling really well in a lot of red states, and in some states he's polling better than Trump. So this could be the point where he just completely edges out Trump, because he'll do the same things, if not more and worse things from our perspective. But for the right, it's even better for them, because I think he would go to even greater lengths than Trump to fuck things up. So this could create an opportunity for DeSantis to continue his rise and supersede Trump. That's the impact I think these would ultimately have.
For a second there, I thought you were going to say that they would have some sort of positive impact, but I'm glad that we got to where we got, because
yeah, cool.
No, I don't see anything other than maybe like a fall guy for Trump getting in trouble for like a little bit. I'd be shocked if anything serious happened to Trump. I would be shocked.
It's just weird, because I remember when this happened, like, we do know people that like kind of that work around the Democratic Party and in various places in Washington, D.C. And there was talk about, we're going to go after Marjorie Taylor Greene, and we're going to try and really hammer them with this stuff. And they just kind of gave up on it. There was kind of energy for this, I think, in parts of the party. And there was probably been energy for it amongst the supporters of the party in those weeks after. But now it's just like, it's amazing to think that with everything going on in America, people are going to be, because I think it's this liberal delusion that other people in the country or around the world see it as they do, which is like just this almost like 9/11 level crisis horror, which I think most people don't really see it like that. And they're going to try and sell that to people. And again, with everything else going on in people's lives, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that think it is that much of a horrible tragedy, even though we've discussed all the ways when it was happening, that it was really dangerous. But the time to convince people of that was in the weeks following, not 18 months later.
The days, the hours.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think they tried with impeachment.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I guess that was part of it, but it was going after Trump. It was like, we've got Trump off social media. We impeached Trump again. We did that. But then everyone else that was kind of connected to it, because there's a whole kind of MAGA part of the Republican Party that were openly promoting that and supporting it. There was questions about, who was going on certain tours the night before or the day before with some of these people that were coming from out of town. There was whole conservative influencers that were hiring buses to like go to this thing. Like there was a lot more people involved with this that if they actually felt like it, they could have gone after in the days following. Instead, they kind of, they made it a Trump thing. Trump got kicked off social media, and everyone else that was intimately involved with it kind of just skated away.
And also, like, they started the second impeachment. They waited a week to do it. And this is what I'm saying. Like they should have just done it. Like they should have just done it the next day, immediately.
Well, it's the kind of thing you just ask yourself what Republicans would do if Barack Obama said Donald Trump is, let me be clear, Donald Trump is stealing the election. I'm going to ask people to go down to the Capitol and riot at the Capitol and stop the election recount. I'm sure Republicans would be very generous.
Is he here on the podcast with us?
Thank you.
Mr. President, is that you?
I was waiting to debut that.
How's Hawaii, sir?
Yeah, but I'm sure that Republicans would be very reasonable after that. Even if that resulted in a fucking like vase falling over in the Capitol building, they would probably be there the next day holding hearings and getting every single person that was in any way connected to that being questioned, and there would be nonstop in the conservative media for days, and they would never let it go.
I mean, he would be held in a brig, like off the coast of like Maryland, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. They're able to capitalize on these kinds of things in the way that these liberals are not, because they feel like it's wrong somehow to wield political power in this way, even when it's deserved.
Well, that's the thing, is that they're like, I think that they're still playing by like the old rules, right? I mean, this isn't like at all a unique take. Like, I'm like the 8 millionth person to say it, but like they are treating this like it's like the same situation, that it's been like for years. And, the reality is that it's not. And like, just because the way that the Republicans practice politics in the U.S. is distasteful and goes against norms and whatever. Like, you're not going to get the norms back just by not fighting the same way that they're fighting. And every single time that the Democrats, refuse, because it is a refusal, like they are refusing to exercise their political power in the same cutthroat, ruthless way that the GOP does, they are making a decision not to do that, and they are making a decision to continue to fight with two hands tied behind their back. So it's just very frustrating to watch, especially coming from the perspective of not caring for either party, but clearly one is worse than the other, and the one that could actually do something about the worst one, just refuses to do it. And I know like a lot of people say that this is by design, and that this is their job and this is what they do. I don't agree with that. I think that they actually do want to win power, and I think they actually do want to be able to govern. But I think they're just not willing, or they're just not willing to do what they need to do in order to take and exercise power. And as long as the Democrats refuse to do that, the GOP is only going to be more and more emboldened, and they're just going to go to more and more extreme levels. I mean, like DeSantis, you were talking about DeSantis earlier. I don't know if you guys saw like the slew of bills that he's trying to get passed or something. Like he's trying to sign into power. They're just going to like strip tons and tons of power away from the state legislature and give it to the unitary executive. And he basically cites like the Dick Cheney unitary executive theory that, well, it's not Dick Cheney's. It's a unitary executive theory that's been in place for many decades, but it was definitely like amplified during Bush, and then in with Obama as well, like kind of codified into law with Obama, or into practice like bipartisanly. So but what DeSantis is trying to do is like basically take that kind of extreme interpretation of the powers of the presidency and bring it to the state level. And what it basically tells you is that is like that if and when he becomes president, that's what it's going to be like. Like it's going to be like hardcore unitary executive authoritarianism. So that's fun to think about. It's going to happen because we know the Democrats are not going to have a response to this. Did I just kill the vibe? Right.
No.
That's usually how these go.
Yeah.
So Eoin, you're disrupting the aggregation business, the aggregation industry. What's up?
Well, we are.
That's right, baby.
Yeah. So Jordan and I have a new project that we're working on, everybody. It's called NewsBolt, like a lightning bolt. And it's essentially aggregation of news links and articles and opinion pieces. We post them 3 times a day right now. It's just kind of a way for people on the left to be able to have somewhere to go to kind of see what people are talking about, and what the news is and what like the kind of left and progressive spin on the news is. You know, I know that, you know, Jordan and I have talked about this before, but like, and Rob, I'm sure that you can be able to relate to this because, you know, like a lot of time you'll be on Twitter and things are just getting buried in all of the noise. Like, you know, like even like more news centered accounts like ours are still going to just be flooded with a whole bunch of other stuff, or there, you know, there's some like media drama that everybody's talking about, or everybody's making fun of whoever the main character is for the day, whatever, blah, blah, blah. This is all Twitter speak if people are listening that don't use the site. But you can kind of get flooded. Same thing with Reddit. And so what we're trying to do is just present a very, very simple, streamlined, you know, usually around 12 to 16 links per post. So that's, you know, somewhere around like 50 a day, where, and we kind of like, put our own spin on the headlines. So you can kind of like, you don't even necessarily have to click everything. You can kind of get a sense of what's going on in the news, just by visiting the page. And so it's kind of like a combination of messaging and link aggregation where, you know, the people that we're trying to reach are people who, you know, are progressive, liberal, left, who, you know, are trying to keep up on the news, but maybe sometimes can find themselves getting a little drowned out. What do you think? Is that a good description, Jordan?
I mean, that's the thing for me.
Excited.
Like I used to use Twitter for news only. And then I started spending more time on it, and it's like, oh, there's like funny people on here, and oh, there's other people on here. And it's just like, now I can't really exclusively use Twitter for news, which is okay, but there's nothing on the left that offers that same utility, right? I have to jump around every different site or try to search for things, or like you said, Reddit, same thing. Even if you try to curate it, it's still a lot of like recommended stuff, a lot of ads. I don't want to see all that. I just want a quick place to go. And I'm not fully endorsing everything that they wrote, but Think Progress used to be like a somewhat good place to look at, like, okay, what's happening in politics in the world with a slightly liberal perspective. And that's dead now. And there's a couple sites that do a decent job, but again, ads, sometimes stuff that's not relevant to me, sometimes just clickbait stuff, because their goal is traffic and ad revenue. And ultimately they have like a team of writers that they really need to push clicks for. Like ours is just, this is a utility. This is a tool. If you go to newsbolt.org, you could just see it's just links. Here's the headlines, links, outlet, read it. And then because, you know, we were, this show and Eoin, your Substack, the Flashpoint we're both part of, Discontents is no more. So we put a sidebar with all of those individual Substacks so you could still get that Discontents network on this site as well.
Yeah, and I think that's I just want to jump off of something that you said there, which is like, you know, like all of these sites that are doing a good job of aggregation, but they're still trying to push their writers and push their articles. Like one thing that we are really, really, really committed to is like not flooding it with articles that we are writing for the site. It's just outbound links, and a spin on each headline that just kind of gives you kind of the what we consider to be kind of our like lefty progressive kind of take. But that's it. And I think that and we've talked about this before, but you know, like a lot of the time people get lost in people start stuff like this, and then they'll just kind of get lost in trying to like overcomplicate things. We're trying to go in the exact opposite direction, streamlined as much as possible, as simple as possible.
Yeah.
That sounds great. I'm glad you two are working on that. Sounds like a pretty cool little project.
Yeah, we've been doing it for about like 6 weeks now, I think. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Very nice. NewsBolt.org.
Yeah. Please come check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, we are seeing decent traffic, and this is, I guess this is kind of our coming out party a little bit. This is like the first time we're really talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't really pushed it other than just retweeting the links and just kind of seeing what happens organically. Because we wanted to see how it flowed. And yeah, tens of thousands of people have already checked it out. So
yeah, and
we're happy
every time. I feel like every time we like boost the Twitter account a little bit more, like it gets more. Like there's just more. It's just it's a snowball kind of.
Right. So Rob, that is, you're only allowed to get news from us now.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, it's everything you would have looked at.
The Rob
anyway.
Rousseau show.
Yeah. I mean, usually usually the way I get my news is I have to email you and you tell me what to think and believe. So this is a really easier way to go about that because we don't have to go through that whole process. So
we're all about streamlining. Like Owen was saying, keeping it simple, keeping it streamlined. Now we don't even have to do that.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
As efficient as possible, as simple, like basically just piping in takes and news into your ear, into your brain. And that's basically what we're doing. So instead of you having to get the brainstem thing put in like you normally would, in this case, it's just you just have to go to the website and that's it.
That's right. You're welcome, Rob.
Very nice. Well, that's great. And Owen, thanks for coming on to the show to talk about that and to talk about everything else that we discussed today. We appreciate you, Owen. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. Where can people find your work? Where can people find the Flashpoint?
The Flashpoint is at my Substack, which is EoinHiggins.substack.com. My first name, last name, Substack.com. You can also just keep up with my work by following me on Twitter, Eoin Higgins _EoinHiggins_.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Owen. We'll talk to you soon.
Great. Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Insurgents. Please remember to subscribe over at theinsurgents.substack.com. Find the podcast on all your favorite podcast apps, and please remember to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It's very helpful, and we appreciate it a lot. But please, again, don't mention Ken Klippenstein in the review. He is banned from the show. It's a lifetime ban, so please do not mention him in the review. And we'll be back later this week with more of the content that you know and love. Goodbye.